terroir is a sense of place as conveyed through the taste of wine. The terroir is a concept that encompasses the varieties of grapes, elevation and shape of the vineyard, type and chemistry of soil, climate and seasonal conditions, and local yeast cultures. Each country, each region, each season, each vineyard. A combination of earth, chemistry, and God's goodness produces the richness of each bottle. Each vineyard, each vintage has its own terroir. Each bottle tells a story. In this segment, I'm going to walk through how we go through our deductive tasting grid and how it is that we figure out what a wine is in a glass. The grid is basically a system that we have in our head that we use to eliminate certain wines and certain regions and certain grapes. The first thing you want to do is look at the site on the wine. You want to look at the color, the clarity, and the viscosity that's in the glass. So looking at this wine, it is a medium ruby wine moving to, the color's pretty consistent throughout, so it's a fairly young wine. Concentration on the wine, which is basically how far you can see through it, concentration on this one's about moderate because it's not too dark, but yet I can still read right through it and see the tablecloth that's underneath it. So it's pretty clear. I don't see any gas or sediment in the wine, and gas is basically just any kind of bubbles or carbonation that you may find, and sediment is the stuff that settles at the bottom of the bottle that can usually accumulate from an unfiltered wine or from an old wine. So this one looks pretty clear to me, and rolling the wine around in the glass, we're going to determine its viscosity. And judging by the tears on this, looks like it's about moderate, maybe moderate plus. So the next thing we are going to do is examine the nose on the wine, which is basically the way the wine smells. So what we're going to look for is the fruit, any earthiness, any kind of oak, or any other aromas that we may get from the wine, whether it be herbaceousness or any kind of floral notes that we get. So we'll smell the wine. See if there's any flaws. I don't detect any flaws. So we say the wine is clean. And it has moderate intensity of aromas. Primary fruits include ripe plums, ripe pomegranate, and even a little bit of prune. There is a lot of earthiness to this wine. I'd say it's earth-driven because I'm struggling finding the fruit, and usually the absence of fruit will be more the presence of earth. So I'm finding a lot of chalk and gravel and stone and even brown dirt. So the fruit flavors aren't really jumping out of the glass. So then I start to look for earth, and there's a lot of earthiness to this wine. And that kind of makes me tick a box in my head, meaning that this could be an old world wine, meaning that it could be from Europe. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a wine from Europe. It's just something that I want to kind of keep in the back of my head. So, any wood. Oddly enough, I'm not picking up any oak on this wine at all, which the reason why I say oddly enough is because a lot of wines or a lot of wine makers typically tend to age their wines in oak barrels, and a lot of people really like that flavor from the oak and that vanilla and spice that you can get. This one I'm not picking up any, so that's kind of a big indicator on what this wine could possibly be. And as far as other flavors that I may find, I'm picking up a really big presence of bell pepper. Like, there's a lot of greenness on this wine. Now, what I mean by green, there's a technical word that we use called pyrazines. And this wine, I would say, does contain a lot of pyrazines. Now, pyrazines, basically, let's say like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, that has high levels of pyrazines because it smells a lot like basil and green bell pepper and even jalapeno skins. Anything that really gives, cabbage could be another one. Anything that really gives a wine a green aroma can come from pyrazines. So I'm definitely picking up some bell pepper and even some basil. And there's just a little bit of floral notes on this wine. And I would say some dried violets. And the reason why I say dried is because you can have different types of floral notes. You could have dried flowers, you could have rotting flowers. This one, they're pretty dry. They're not very fresh. Now we are going to taste the wine. When we taste the wine, we're examining the structure of the wine, basically meaning we are looking for the fruit, its acid, alcohol, if there's any wood, tannin. All of these elements make up this wine, and every element tells a story. So when we taste the wine, we have to examine each part carefully, because that's going to give you really big indicators on what this wine could possibly be. So we'll go right into taste. Wow, that wine is bone dry. Acid is really high. Alcohol, I'm not getting a whole lot of alcohol. Sometimes we spit our wine, but sometimes you can ingest just a little bit of the wine. I'm still salivating, a lot of acid, excuse me. But you can feel a little bit of a burn right here at like right between your throat and your chest. Kind of like if you're drinking vodka or tequila, you can kind of feel it warm your chest a little bit. And this wine isn't really doing that. So not detecting a whole lot of alcohol. Sometimes you can kind of feel it evaporating off of your mouth. Not picking up a whole lot of alcohol. So acid's high. Alcohol's about moderate minus. The body on the wine, it's about medium bodied. It's not a very big, full, lush wine, but it's not really thin and wimpy like some wines can be. So I give it a good medium bodied. Tannin on it. Tannin's about moderate plus. It's not extremely tannin, like it's not gripping the sides of my mouth and my teeth and my gums. Like it's not sticking to my mouth a whole lot, but it's definitely there. So now the clues that we've looked at, the acid is very high. So once again, ticking another box, thinking that this can definitely be an old world wine because of that acid. Usually these grapes are higher in acid because it's growing in a cool climate, so they don't get to ripen as much as other grapes that are grown in a warmer climate. So the acid's high on this wine. The alcohol is moderate minus, which also tells us it could be from a cool climate. The tannin levels, keep that in mind also, that it's about moderate plus. Now I'm going to taste the wine again and look for the fruit and the earth and the wood. Okay, so the fruits that I'm getting from this wine, tart, underripe cherry. I'm getting a lot of cherry on this wine. Also pomegranate, confirming the pomegranate that I smelled earlier. I can taste it also. Prune, plums, dates. I'm getting some fig on this wine. Like it's a dry wine. The fruits aren't as vibrant and lush and ripe and alive as like, let's say, for instance, a California Syrah or a Malbec from Argentina. Like this wine it's pretty dry. So confirming that earthiness, like I could taste a lot of this earth. There's chalk, there's rock, there's gravel. So once again, ticking another box and moving on to I'm almost 100% convinced that this is an old world wine, because you don't really taste a lot of wines from South America or the United States or New Zealand, Australia. Really don't taste a lot of wines like this that come from those areas. So I'm starting to hone in on certain areas where this wine might be from. Okay, so moving on, oak. I didn't smell any oak on the wine, and I definitely don't taste any oak on this wine. So that's a huge indicator on where I could be going with my final conclusion on what this wine may be. Also, once again, confirming that this wine does contain pyrazines, which are those green elements that I spoke about earlier, meaning the bell pepper and the basil. Definitely getting this on this wine. So let's talk about the clues that we have gathered so far. We looked at the site and we saw the concentration was about moderate. It had a real pretty ruby color, and this color was consistent throughout. I'll get back to that later on, why I mentioned that. Confirming all those dried fruits, the wine is bone dry, it's high in acid, moderate plus in tannin, the tart cherry, and the absence of oak. So I'm really starting to boil it down to what the grape may be in this wine. 90% of deductive tasting is trying to find out what the wine is not what the wine is. And a lot of people confuse that. Like they stick their nose in the glass and immediately they want to find out, what is this wine? Like, oh, they're trying to figure it out, they're trying to guess it. That's incorrect. The best way to do this is to go through a deductive format and eliminate what the wine is not. And then after all of the evidence that you've gathered, use that little pile of grapes that this wine could be and go from there. Now on to determine our final conclusion. What we are going to do is use all of the clues that we gathered to figure out what the wine is. Here we have a chart of all of the classic varietals and all of the classic countries where the wine can possibly be from. So what I'm going to do is, using the clues that we gathered, eliminate a lot of the grapes that this wine is not. And that's the big misconception, is that a lot of people want to take the wine, stick their nose inside the glass and go and immediately try to guess what the wine is. The whole object is to be able to find out what the wine isn't, hence the deductive format. So once we boil it down to a good handful of grapes on what the wine could possibly be, then we start to determine our final conclusion. So using the clues that we gathered, let's take a look at these grapes. Now, in my conclusion, high acid, moderate plus tannin, high level of pyrazines, which is the green character that I spoke about earlier, the green bell pepper and basil. Using those clues and especially the absence of oak can really boil it down to what this grape could possibly be and where it's from. Now, we'll start over here. Pinot Noir. We're going to hold on to that one. We'll discuss that one in just a little bit. Gamay, I don't think it has enough fruit to be a Gamay. Sangiovese. You know, the funny thing with this wine is I think the fruit characteristics were very similar to a Sangiovese, with that tart cherry and pomegranate and the earth. But I really don't think that this is a Sangiovese, because Sangioveses are very, very high in tannin, and they can have some oak on them. So I don't think that this is a Sangiovese. So Cab Merlot, we're going to hold on to that one. Shiraz, Syrah, yeah, I really don't think so. They're a lot bigger and a lot more fruit to them. And they do have higher levels of pepper in the wine too, so I don't think it's that. Grenache Blend, we'll kind of hold on to that one and discuss that. Malbec, no, this isn't Malbec. Malbecs are a lot higher in alcohol and much higher in tannin, and they can have some oak on them. So Amarone Blend, absolutely not. Tempranillo, definitely not Tempranillo from Rioja. Tempranillos tend to have a lot of oak on them, a lot of new American oak, and which would be the polar opposite of this wine. So definitely not Tempranillo. Let's see, Cabernet Franc, we're going to hold on to that one. We'll discuss that. And then Zinfandel, definitely not a Zinfandel. Doesn't have enough of that vibrant, lush fruit that Zinfandels can have, and Zinfandels are a lot lower in acid. So, okay. Now, the reason why I held on to these grapes right here is because they can contain pyrazines, and they will have like those green bell pepper flavors that I found in this wine. Now, would this be Cab Merlot from California? No, the acid's way too high. And another reason why I don't think it's Cab Merlot from Bordeaux is because Bordeaux uses a lot of French oak. So I didn't find any oak on this wine, so we're going to mark that one off right there. Grenache Blend, same thing, a Grenache Blend from, let's say, the South Rhone. No, not really, because it doesn't have that level of pyrazines, and they will use oak, and it'll be much higher in alcohol if it's from the South Rhone. So let's see, Cab Franc we'll hold on to. Pinot Noir, the color could possibly, just looking at the wine, could make me think that it's a Pinot Noir, but I don't think that Pinot Noir doesn't have a level of pyrazines to it. They don't smell like bell peppers. So you get more strawberry and cranberry and cherry from Pinot Noir, so I don't think it's a Pinot Noir. So let's see, the only grape that we are left with is Cabernet Franc. And discussing Cabernet Franc, you do get those bell pepper notes. Cabernet Franc can have a high level of acid. The color matches what I would think a Cabernet Franc could be. So we'll go down here to the chart and figure out the countries. So we already determined that this is an Old World wine, or I determined it's an Old World wine. So we're going to mark off all of the New World countries. All right, so would this be from Austria? No. Spain? Absolutely not. France? France is my conclusion, so we'll just go ahead and mark off the other ones, Italy and Germany. So my conclusion, this wine is a Cabernet Franc from France, and we got to start thinking of the classic areas that grow Cabernet Franc, which would be in the Loire Valley, which would be Chinon or Bourgues or Saint Nicolas de Bourgues. So it could be one of those areas, kind of splitting hairs if we say, oh, is this Chinon or is this Bourgues? So I'm just going to say Chinon. Now, I would like to talk about what I had mentioned earlier that I would get back to when I referred to the color of the wine and the site. Now, when I had mentioned that the color was pretty much consistent to the rim, that can indicate a young wine. So now we're going to try and figure out what the age on this wine is. Sometimes when wine can have a brown or maybe caramel kind of tint to it or color, that can indicate an older wine. If you find sediment in the glass, that could also indicate that it's an older wine. And when the color isn't as consistent from the center moving out to the rim, that can also indicate that it's an older wine. This wine, the color is very consistent from the core moving to the outer rim. So that's kind of telling me that this wine probably isn't older than 3 years old. If there was an inconsistency there, then I would probably say that this wine could be older than 5 years, maybe even going on 7 years. Also, when I smelled it, it didn't smell old. Like the fruit didn't really, it didn't smell diminished, like old and bruised and really dried and decaying type fruit, but it smelled pretty fresh. So my final conclusion, this wine is from France, from the Loire Valley, and it's Cabernet Franc. Age range, I'll call 2 to 3 years, so we'll say it's a 2012 Cab Franc. So let's take a look at it. Wow, oh cool. It is 2012 Cab Franc from Chinon in France, and we got it right. So you see the way that I got the wine correct was going through the deductive format, and to be honest, Cab Franc kind of stands out a little bit to me because of its solid characteristics, like the fact that they use very little or no oak, kind of screams at me at what this wine could be. Then the bell pepper and the violets and the dryness and the high acidity and the rockiness and all that, the deep soil, it really kind of gives itself away. It's really good at revealing itself. So there it is. That's our deductive tasting.